One's the anniversary of the church, 1841 to 1966. The other's the consecration, May 17th, 1953. There's a photo of it to find it. I'm about 13. I'm going to put these up, I think, so you can look if you want, or just, if I forget, leave them on the floor, pick them up. I don't think Mr. Ziegler's in there. Juanita brought this in, that she's been searching through her things, finding things for this occasion. And she came across Chicago Tribune article written in 1989 about Crete. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but you might be interested. And she's donated it to the library, so of the Historical Society, which means it'll be in my house. That's what you have to get. I think that's all the announcements. Does Irma have a report of the Christmas card?
Definitely. Harriet has a box of them here tonight, and I've already sold some for you here, so. And if you run out of them, I have a whole trunk full in my car outside of the parking lot. So if all of you buy 10 packages or so, we'll be very happy. I also have a lot of Afghans left. I told you I had no red ones. I only had blue and green ones. Well, I took the blue one out one day because somebody wanted the blue one. Lo and behold, then I remembered. I had wanted to get rid of one carton, and I put that blue one on top of the red ones. So when I pulled the blue one out of there, I had only red ones left in that carton. So I don't have any more blue ones. I have red ones and green ones. And that's good for Christmas, right? So come and buy 2 of them, a red one and a green one. I'd love to get rid of them.
Are they available tonight?
I didn't bring those because I got a car full of cards.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. I thought you were talking about cards.
No, I've got cards. Yeah, definitely. You can. Harriet's got her box full here, and it's like I guess there's 15 in the box, and if she sells all those, I got a whole trunk load full in my car.
So after the meeting, you can
Buy
sell them
some,
after
right?
somewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll gladly get rid of them.
Maybe some of them don't know what the Christmas cards are, the picture
Yeah.
of the house.
The picture of the house, it's the Dr. Bloom house this year. We already have next year's picked up, but I'm not going to tell you what it is.
And you know how much they cost?
$6 for 10, the same as last year, but the printers have already told us possibly they will go higher. The printing costs will go higher. That means we will have to raise the price also. So maybe you want to buy a few this year. We have 182 packages, so you know that's quite a few. So you need to buy more than one package, right?
What sales?
And the information about the cards will be written in the Crete Messenger, I think, whenever that comes out.
Yes, and it's going to be in the Crete Record in the first week of November. Always, it's been that way since I've done it. It's always in the first week of November. So when I took it in earlier this week, 2 weeks ago, she said, "Don't you think it's kind of early?" And I said, "Well, for the last 2 years, it's been the first week in November." That's fine. It's going to be in the first week
The
in
thing
November.
is, we're not going to reorder either, so.
No, never.
They're 1,500.
182 packages.
That's
1,800 cards.
1,800
But
cards.
they actually
So when
gave us
they're
a couple
sold,
extras.
that will be it.
Yeah.
I'm wishing I kept some, because in my younger years, I never wanted to send Crete Historical Society Christmas cards. But as I've grown older and I continue to live in Crete, I'd like to make a
Collage.
wall
Yeah,
hanging.
yeah. I've had requests for people who want a copy of every one we've ever had, but that's, can't do that.
That's right. So keep that in mind. Norma covered new situation already. So now we're ready to begin our program. Juanita, where are you?
I'm here.
Oh, will you come and sit in front? And Phyllis, she's going to introduce and talk about the early life of Juanita in as short a possible time as possible, so we can get on to your remembrances. I know that one, I've known Juanita since 1950. She was in Crete, she moved to Crete Township in 1946. And I knew her as one of the neighborhood, our neighborhood covered Walbrecht up to Richton, Old Post Road, down and over to Bemis, Clemmy over to Bemis, and up Walbrecht again. Oh, over to Exchange somehow. And she was to be one of the neighborhood mothers. Since then, she's become a very close, my mother's close friend, and then now my friend and advisor and supporter in every way. So I'd like to introduce her and Phyllis.
Well, I have the opportunity to give you a few facts of Juanita. Barbara and I went over and interviewed her. We knew a few things, but she's given us a lot more information. And I'd like to give you some of the information that we quizzed her on. But I don't want to, it'll just be for a few minutes, because what we really need are your stories or recollections of Juanita and Juanita's life here in the community, and perhaps some of your life growing up with Juanita. And so that's what we'd like. But I'd like to start out with a few facts, most of which I really didn't know, even though we spent a number of years walking together early in the morning. So that was fun, because about every third house Juanita could tell me a story about. Okay. Juanita Andersen was born March 23rd, 1913 in Kankakee, Illinois. She and her parents moved to Chicago shortly afterwards, where her sister Helen was born. So she's grew up in her early childhood with World War I, and she remembered that when World War I ended, that the soldiers marched down the street, and they allowed her uncle to break from the parade of soldiers to see his family. At age 5, Juanita's family moved to a farm near Waseca, Illinois. She started school there, like most everyone who grew up during that time, and for many years afterwards, walking 1.5 miles each way to school from her house. Later they moved, her family moved in 1919 to Harvey, where they bought a house. Her father bought calves, which he butchered in their garage. She attended the schools there and Thornton High School, where she graduated in 1930. She also met her future husband, George Andersen, that almost everyone knows was called Bud, on a blind date during her senior year. And that was a very quick romance, I imagine, because she and Bud eloped after she graduated as a senior from high school. That was in 1930. After her marriage, she did attend Thornton Junior College for 1 year, but then had to drop out because she and Bud moved to Shelton, Illinois, where Bud got a job testing cream. At that point, by then, the Depression was affecting so many people, and it was hard to find jobs, so we felt fortunate to get that job. And during the Depression, Juanita said that sometimes they had for dinner sandwiches with not too much on it, but at least they had some food there. She credited her aunt and uncle to help them because they bought some food to help them along. They returned to Thornton, where Bud obtained a job cleaning freight cars for $15 each week.
That was through Blue Island.
Oh, there was Blue Island, oh, thank you, Blue Island. Yes, they rented a house for $15 a month, so they had the other $75 for all their other expenses there. During World War II, Juanita made containers for ammunition in Harvey. They lived in Blue Island, and she had to take the bus to work each evening and returned home in the morning. Eventually, she got to Crete by way of Bud's aunt and uncle, George and Helen Warren. They sold their house in Blue Island, the Warrens did, and purchased property in Crete Township. And the property that they purchased, I believe, is the house that Jimmy and Buck Bowman live in now.
And that was the Barron's farm, and I bet some of you remember the Barron's.
And there's some photos of Barron's.
In August 1946, the Warrens offered to give Bud and Juanita 34 acres of land on the northwest corner of Venus and Clemmy Road if Juanita would keep house for them for a year. They ended up, Bud and Juanita ended up living with the Warrens in Crete Township for 2 years. In 1948, they purchased the old Eagle Lake Lutheran School for their home at an auction for $600. They moved it to the property for another $600. They moved it on a foundation, which they had built for the basement. And they placed the house on top of that foundation. And they lived in the basement for 2 years with, I believe, 5 children, right, at that point? Yes. And
The one was born just when we moved in there.
Yeah. So I'm sure it was a cozy situation. And in 1949, they were given 25 baby turkeys by Buck Bowman's mother and father to raise and sell. They fed the turkeys, and just before Thanksgiving, they killed, dressed, and packaged them for sale. They hired neighbors to help them with the work and set up an assembly line in the basement to clean the turkeys. The next year they purchased 100 turkeys, and over the years it was increased until they reached 1,500 turkeys for them to raise. And I'll leave that at that point because there may be some stories about that here. The kids, their children attended the little schoolhouse on Clemmy Road in Crete Township. And at that place they also enjoyed square dances after the PTA meetings, and at the square dances, Alan Clemmy played his accordion. As almost all of you know, that Juanita and Bud have 5 children. Sylvia Neitzel, Sylvia, her husband are here tonight. Pat Williams, who couldn't make it from Kentucky, right? Bruce Andersen, that's right. And Judy Taylor and right? And Janet Furnish. So, but while you're here, would you all stand up? There, just so you know. Actually, we shouldn't clap for them, we should clap for Juanita. She raised. There. Bud passed away in 1967. Juanita Andersen and other ladies in the eastern part of Crete Township formed a sewing circle that was very busy doing things, and I'll let someone else talk about that there. Also in the 1960s, Juanita and her family participated in a program hosting for a weekend foreign students who attended the University of Chicago, which Juanita may want to say a word about because that, I think, is a very worthwhile program, probably for us and for them. They had a Japanese couple in addition to people from England and Rhodesia. Juanita also, who, as most of you know, never been just sit at home at all, she participated in another group called Person to Person, which had discussions about major issues of the day. In 1950, Juanita became involved in politics because the superintendent of schools asked her to take a petition around to keep the fractional part of Crete Township in the 201 school district. She talked to lots of people, including the farmers in the township. It was, I believe, the farmers that wanted to get out of the 201 school district. But with her help and others, the fractional part of the township stayed in the school system. after that, Dr. Miller and the dentist, Dr. Zegers, called Juanita and said, we know just the person to get more involved. And they wanted to form an independent committee of Republicans to replace the current elected officials.
Who were Republicans?
Yes.
And we're no Democrats.
This independent committee was so successful that all the officials at that point lost the election, and the independent Republicans got in. As a result of that, they knew they had a person who could really work at things. And so they asked Juanita to be a Republican precinct committeeman for the township. She became the first woman precinct committeeman in the township. The committeemen had previously met in Renzie's Tavern, but they felt that it was a little bit smoky and maybe the conditions were not the best, and they wanted to treat Juanita the right way. So they started meeting in the old town hall at that point.
Is there anyone here who remembers anything about that?
Imagine Dolores does.
Do you
I
remember
thought
the
that-
committeeman meeting in the Renzie's Tavern?
What year was that? Well, I think it was about 1950 or 52 that I was there. I was upstairs.
And the only precinct committeeman who's left that I could think of was Bill Muring. He's not here, is he? They were going to try to come. He was a precinct committeeman then, and Don Easterday.
That was before the days that you would be insisting on being called committee woman?
I never was. I was always.
was still
Well,
called
that was a new thing. You didn't have to be politically correct.
Legally, it still is called committeeman. We have a couple, I know Pam's a
Here she
committeeman
is.
here. Yeah, committeeman, yeah, is there. So, in 1963, Juanita passed the test to be licensed as a realtor. Her life wasn't busy enough. So she started working in the Park Forest office of Pat and Bob Blair's Fairfax Realty. Later, she worked with Dave Mano in Crete, and then worked then later at Coldwell Banker. And then
My everlasting boss is sitting right back there.
the lawyer's council there. So, in 1970, well, actually, Juanita told me that she really had to continuously work to pay for her love of traveling. And in 1970, Juanita became very adventurous and bought a villa in Jamaica. And some of you might have heard about that. I had heard about it, but I really didn't know that much. They bought this villa in Jamaica with she and her friend Doris Ellis, yeah. And after they bought it, they soon discovered that they really didn't have enough funds for them to just live there themselves. So they moved into the servants' quarters and rented out the 3 nice bedrooms to tourists there. After a year living in Jamaica, Juanita returned to Crete to continue to work as a realtor and to pay her continuous, about every 3 months she returned to Jamaica for a couple weeks. Doris and Juanita then sold their property in 1981, and Juanita decided to take off for the world at that point. She's traveled to Europe 6 times. She's toured Australia, New Zealand, China, the Fiji Islands, and Bali. And a few years ago in the 1990s, during her trip to Turkey, someone decided to mug her for her purse, but she wouldn't let go of the purse, so she got dragged down the subway steps. Enjoyed the interesting experience of a Turkish doctor, or did you go to the hospital?
I went to the hospital.
There. So,
Turkish policemen were very, very nice.
there. She told me that her only regret is that she has not been to Africa, but she's ready to take off. So if there's anyone here that wants to go, she would like to go to Africa. There. In 1980, Juanita moved into Crete to live with her father, Glenn Roberts, on Wood Street. And in 1989, she retired from real estate. But she really didn't retire from anything because she just became more busy in activities. She became very busy in the Crete Women's Club, and she served as a president from 1991 to 1992. In 2002, she put together a committee to re-energize the garden walk of the Crete Women's Club and to keep it going when the Women's Club was afraid that it wouldn't come back for another year.
Now, President's here, she can attest to
Oh,
that.
And she's chairwoman again for next year, too. She's also been an active member in the Crete Methodist Church, and she's been a member of the Historical Society for some years. She enjoys swimming 5 days a week at Governor State at 6:30 in the morning. And as you know, she's still active in many things, because many of you might have tried to call her, as I have, and you can't get a hold of her lots of times, because many days she has something going in the morning, afternoon, and evening. So that's our Juanita. We're fortunate in Crete to have her. Very fortunate. And now I'd like to turn it over to anyone who wants to volunteer a story or something about Juanita and life in Crete.
I just want to say that our garden walk was absolutely, positively defunct. And then all of a sudden,
Before what?
yes, like a year ago, then all of a sudden, Juanita just took it on herself with her ever-striving spirit, and she says, this can't be. And she just came up, she got her little notebook, jotted everything down. We had 5 gardens. We had a beautiful facility at the Plum Creek Nature Center. I think it's going to be striving for a number of years due to Juanita's enthusiasm and just really going to it. And I can't believe how you did this. Oh.
I want to
Thank
add,
you.
I want to add to that. My Judy, who is here, and her husband has been in the Navy and lived in many places, and she used to say, you know, Mom, you have a unique place in Crete. I've never been any place where people work together. They're like your family, you know, we're very close. And so these things that I didn't do on my own. I did with a wonderful committee, Sandra and Central sitting right back there. And we just worked together, and everybody made it go. It just needed somebody to say, we'll do it.
Yes, but I like the way you speak to people. Many times you didn't like what I was doing, but you came straight forward and you said, I think this and this. And then you didn't, you know, you just said what you meant and what you had to say, and that was all. Was
I've
wonderful.
always tried to say what I think. I don't say behind your back. I say to
No,
your face.
that's true. Thank you.
Yeah, Pam?
Another women's club recollection that I have of Juanita is taking over a spring luncheon. And she was very, very creative. She wrote a play, Women Through the Ages, directed the play, and it was an enjoyable afternoon. It was very good. So she has a very creative
Again, I
mind
had a
and
committee of
energetic
all the
spirit.
past presidents who worked very hard.
It's you.
Is there anyone that,
You were the author. You were the playwright.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I love Florida, Crete, and when I got to be a teenager, I hated it, and lived out in the country, because, you know, all my friends were here in Crete, and this building, well, it wasn't this building, I guess, it was a CYC then, the East Center. We had a wonderful time here, and it was wonderful growing up
the
here.
old township hall.
I remember with the Baccas especially, we used to go to the swimming hole, and we always had a good time in the summers, but when I was a senior in high school, my mother was president of the PTA, and my father was president of the school board, and that was difficult. That was.
I never had any problem.
You're always the favorite.
What I remember, Barbara, when you were talking, is really not about my mom, but growing up in our house was that when we have, it seemed like there was more snow then, and always wanting a day off of school, and we would have to wait till late at night, and then Mother would call your father, because to see if, because your dad was road commissioner, is it called?
Yeah.
So we'd have to find out from him to see if there was any school there.
If there
That
was
was
a road,
always
if there was a
exciting.
road to be open, he saw to it that ours was open.
We never got to stay over school. The snowplow.
That was very, I remember that as being very
Incentive to get those
exciting,
road
and
plows.
us always wanting Mom to call your dad to see if, you know, we could be off.
I would like to mention the fact that we started talking about having a sewing group, and we never did sew.
Remember that.
That turned it eventually into, Fanny Kinsey finally joined
Oh,
us, many of you know her, and so we became a bridge group. We started in 1950, the first meeting was at my sister's house. That bridge group is 52 years old, and many of my members are here. It's changed through the years, but they can tell you something about that.
Yeah, we were gonna play Canasta for a while too. I don't think we did that either, did you?
I think we played
With your mom and Phyllis and Aldona.
Would stand up, the ones who were part of that bridge club.
The original club.
Yeah, the original.
No, everybody who's here now who belongs.
Yes.
Please stand up, the ones who
Who
are here.
does never know?
You know what you are, isn't it?
Who belongs now?
Phyllis is here and
Ethel Pearson.
yeah, and Holly now. She had a problem.
Yeah, Polly.
It's just what? 3 of us that are old.
Original.
And I'd like to say a little something about the turkeys. That was an interesting part of my life. We were living in the basement of this Eagle Lake schoolhouse. And when we went to visit Buck's folks, this is interesting, the way we are shirt tail relations. The Warrens who bought the Barron's farm and exchanged their Blue Island house for the Barron farm. The people who bought it, the uncle, George Warren, you remember him? That was my husband's uncle. I know, I got that wrong. Aunt Holly, the wife, was my husband's aunt. And George Warren was Buck's cousin, your mother's cousin.
Mother's cousin.
Yes, So when, and his, and Holly and Uncle Doug Warren were living in the house at the time, and they took us down to visit his folks, and they raised a lot of turkeys. They had been in this business. Well, my husband had never even been on a farm until his aunt and uncle bought that Barron's farm. He's the one that wanted to move out there. I've been on a farm a lot of times, I didn't especially want to move out.
Dragged me to town one time, walking.
Yeah, but,
I was 4, no. She was mad because Uncle Doug couldn't get home and take her where she wanted to go, so we walked all the way to Brady Fletcher's.
Exchange trees.
I can remember that.
Anyway,
That was like 4.
Starter for life.
They gave me these 25 turkeys, and I didn't know how to do anything about them. And they were babies, just little ones. And on the upstairs, where we weren't living, we made a pen up there and put them in and started there, and then finally got a chicken house and took them out and raised them, and we gave them to all the relatives that Thanksgiving. So the next year, why we decided we needed to do something about it, we bought 100 of them. And then we just kept getting more. And Bruce, what's the name of the people that have the Rosebud Farms? They were up in, I think it's East Chicago, or up there on the south side. And they bought the first ones that we had raised in September. Those were ready. And so they said to us, we were the only ones raising them on the ground, finished corn feeding them. They said, we'll buy every turkey that you raise. So we got to the place that we raised 750 with the first batch that came in January, and they took those in September. And then the second batch, we hired the country ladies around there to come. My husband set up an assembly line. We got 2 chicken houses. they have turkey seminars sliding around that you could go to. And we went to those. We found out he had a kind of a metal barrel made that had rubber tips on it, and that's how you took the feathers off of the turkeys when that went around. We had a killing house where they had to kill them just right. Then you took the feathers off, and then in our basement he set up this assembly line, and we had women come in and we eviscerated them, we scrubbed them with brushes, cleaned them up, and that was when they were just starting to put them in plastic bags. And we went to a seminar how to do that. And we put them in plastic bags, and then we delivered most of them when, first my husband worked for English Shepherds in Harvey, Farm and Garden, and we sold a lot of them there besides a lot of relatives. So this grew and grew, and we had lots of fun. If some of the women that worked there were here now, they used to tell about my mother first, and then my cousin, and various ones came and would cook the meals, and we'd eat there in the rooms, and they made their Christmas, spending money, you know, doing that. My husband was packaging over in one room, and there was a little hole in the wall, and he'd hear the women talking and telling jokes over there, and then he'd tell some, you know, but you had to do it in a couple of days because we had no refrigeration. We bought 3 big turkey tanks and had running water in and out. We put the turkeys in there and left them overnight, but then you had to package them and get rid of them. And when it come, you know, close to midnight, we got kind of slap happy. But that was a real experience. But finally, as his job at White Garden took more and more time, it was becoming more difficult, especially the delivery room was a big job. So when we finally figured out we were making a quarter a bird, we decided it was time to give it up.
And our dogs, our German Shepherds, thought they were tasty meals.
Yeah.
I mean, we had all the problems there. When you talk about that hole in the wall, it wasn't only the jokes going from the ladies out. Bud told some jokes, and I'm in the midst, and we had beautiful stainless steel things and running water, but I'm eviscerating a turkey. Bud told the joke, and I laughed. And I must have cut. I said, anyway, all this stuff came in my mouth. Won't forget it. And also, did you remember that Bruce worked harder than any other kid his age?
No, I did it. I did all the watering. And
No,
feeding.
he told me you did.
No, I didn't. Those darn turkeys had to be fed and watered.
But you notice as soon as I went away to school, they quit raising them.
They didn't even know about quarters. That was exciting. Home from school, and there would be all those people there cooking, and all those tables set up in what was our living room then. And it seemed like all our cousins would be there, and all the neighborhood kids.
It was fun. And not only that, do you remember that once when Lois was upstairs, our cousin, cooking, and your dog got the handle that was sitting in the hallway? Lois came up and saw that she's got all these people to feed. Am I telling this right? And so she grabbed the bone from the dog, put it in the pan and cooked it.
That was she getting the 5-second rule.
I bet Grandma Ward didn't do that.
Grandma Ward would never have been there sitting on that.
And then the thing about the PTA, the out in the red, was that a red schoolhouse, Bruce, then? It is now.
The way it was white.
I believe it was white.
When we first moved out there, you know, those were all the Battermans and all the German people out there, real German community. Someone told us that on Saturday night they played pinochle in that little schoolhouse, and we would come. So we went, and I tell you, we opened the door, and there were chairs like this lined up all around the wall. Everybody sat there. Nobody said hello or greeted us or a thing. I never felt so funny in all my life. So we went and sat down, and then pretty soon they put up the tables and we played pinochle, and those people became very good friends as the years went by. But then we created a PTA, and Alan Clemmy, how many of you remember him? He played his accordion, And so after, we had the best PTA meetings, afterward we square danced, and boy,
And
everybody.
we had
in the
cakewalks, I
community
remember
came.
the cakewalks.
Yeah, we had those too.
And played bunco, didn't you
That,
play
that
bunco?
community, we became
Bruce came as my
really
partner, because I'm from
close
North
to
Dakota.
one another, it was important.
I do remember
You
that
did
the
too,
boys
you
used
did
to
too.
lock us in the outhouse, there was an outhouse. Mhm. And there was a little skating pond behind that school, and we used to bring our ice skates to school. The teacher would, we had her, she lived in the school, and we would all ice skate. That was
And
fun.
we had the pond between our house and Sylvia's and my sister's. And my husband got a light pole and put up a high light out there. And Bruce used to bring the football team home with him at night. And they played hockey out there. And Sunday afternoons, I just enjoyed when Judy and Bruce were in high school together. And Neil Miller and Kay Miller, Kay wasn't married then, but they were going together. And the whole group would come out. And I remember looking out my kitchen window, and they'd have these bright colored scarves and sweaters on, you know. And afterward, they'd come in and have hot chocolate or donuts or something.
Well, historically too, I think Doris Ellis and her husband started Tuckaway Golf Club.
Mhm. And I took, I helped, you all know Tuckaway Golf Club. When John was going to buy it, he knew my husband through business. They were friends. I didn't know Doris at that time. And he came out one night after dark, and he was so discouraged because he'd been working with a real estate man, and he was going to buy a farm just over the line in Indiana, and it was a real good deal, and the real estate man didn't bother it. He went and bought it. So he was real discouraged. So I had just heard about where the Tuckaway farm is now, that farm was for sale. And that was before I sold real estate to Doris. We went out, he had a Jeep, and it was covered with snow, and we went and drove all over that place. And he wanted it, and so he went ahead and bought it. So as long as John was there, I was able to play golf free for the rest of my life.
Wasn't very long though, was it?
No, it wasn't, because afterward he and Doris were divorced, and then it was his wife that started selling real estate and went with me to Jamaica, and we bought the villa together, which was a losing battle financially.
They had good cake, right?
When they were talking about the places she went, I don't think she mentioned that you've been going to Mexico for a number of years and taking your kids.
No, that's been a number of years we've been doing that.
Nothing historical in that.
But,
Nothing historical in that.
no, nothing straight, but,
It's a lot of fun.
I was just
tell them about that, Judy.
Of what?
the party lines.
Oh my gosh,
I mean, it's on.
the party lines.
The party lines.
We had 8 people in our party line.
I had just gotten on the phone, made a call to Chicago to my mother, and I hear this click, on the receiver. So I said, whoever's doing it, if you'll wait just a short while, I'll be off the phone, and you can handle it. It's long distance call. And I think it was Ted Kramer. Because he had a little German accent. He said, well, you know, it's a good day, and our mower broke down, and you know, you've got to make hay when the sun shines. I never heard that expression.
That was, you used to wait for the ring to make sure ours was like 3 short and 2 long or something. You had to listen to the ring before you answered it to see which person it was.
for you.
If it was for
5
you.
kids in one house,
Yes.
the party line.
Oh, yes, they
Our
would.
neighbor would listen to all of the conversations.
I don't know, Mrs. Clemmy,
She was
even when
well
she wasn't
informed.
talking.
Something that I think is a little historical, she had mentioned about the school and then voting us out of the district. When I came out here, I'm having a senior moment, what was the
Crackle.
Mr. Crackle. I had talked to him, and he knew I'd been president of PTA in Blue Island. I was interested, and Sylvia was starting as a freshman, I guess, and Pat was in sophomore and Pat in 8th grade. And so he called me, and he said, Mrs. Anderson, I know you have children going to school and you're interested. And he said, I wonder if you know that Mr. Clemmy, and that was the Clemmy that lives in the little white house now where they have all the pumpkins. I can't remember what his first name was.
With Ted.
Was that Ted?
Mm-hmm.
And he said he's getting a petition around. They were just voting on the 201U unit, whether we were going, and that was going to take Park Forest in, which people didn't like, and he was taking around to the farmers out there. We're in the fractional down Clemmy, and he said if this goes through, they'll vote you out, and you won't have any school district. So he said, I wonder if you want to take a petition around. So I got it, and I went first. I am direct. I went first to Mr. Clemmy, and I told him what I was going to do. And he said, you know, Mrs. Anderson, my people came out here. My parents came here from Germany. And he said, you're a newcomer. You have no right to come in and try to tell us what to do. And I said, Mr. Clemmy, my father's people came here before the Revolutionary War. I think I'm not a newcomer to this country at all, you know. So we went ahead and had a petition, and we are in 201U. Sometimes I think maybe somebody might be a little unhappy that they are now.
Those were the days when Bill Paul drove the school bus, and we would get out and push the bus, and we got stuck on the stove. He would get out the door now.
And he would go around and see, and just personally on his bus, to see how many students were riding that year, how many children were in each family. Do you have any other special memories, Sylvia?
No.
She didn't like the snakes out in the country. She used to run over with the lawnmower.
Still does.
Still does?
No, they just dropped down on it now. It was sometime in the early 50s.
Oh, nothing. Can't read it.
Sandra,
In 46.
do you have any special memories either from church or from?
Well, I've been in a number of different discussion groups with Juanita, and it's always very interesting to wait and hear her perspective on whatever book we've read, or if it's a Sunday school lesson or whatever, because she always is very willing to share her experiences, and of course she's had such a variety of experiences, and her opinions are always very respected.
It's a nice way of saying I have a big mouth.
And I believe there's some people here who are sitting with her presently.
Yes.
Juanita is known as the Esther Williams of University Park.
I tried to see, yes.
Swim, but I don't.
I remember when Juanita organized having the foreign students out from the University of Chicago. We got very involved in Crete at the time, and we got a young man who was from Indonesia, and he was an artist, and he had created a little poetry book with his own drawings, and we still have that book. But it was interesting to me to meet all these people from the University of Chicago who are from many different lands and their host families, because I didn't know a whole lot of people in Crete, and I just thought it was a wonderful way to get acquainted, and it's a terrific experience all the way around.
Betty Cosme was president of the grade school PTA. I was vice president, and you know, the PTA's vice president has to have the programs. And J.R. McCullough was working with us, and he had, because he sold books to the university, he had a good thing in there. So he said, I can get these foreign exchange students to come out if you can organize it. So our members signed up if they would have a student for the weekend. And then the students wrote what they were majoring in. And so then they could choose, you know, if it was an attorney, maybe he would choose somebody who was studying law or being an attorney. and so forth. And we had some wonderful experiences. The students, and these weren't young students now, these are graduate students who most of them were married and had families. And they said if they hadn't come out to Crete, they would have gone home to their country thinking that the United States was what it was like up there in Chicago. They would have never known the warmth of the small families, the small town. They said what we did was on Sunday, before they were going to go home, we had bus to take them back. And we'd have a potluck at the high school. And everybody brought something, and we came, the whole family. And then we asked the men to introduce their guests. Men were part of the PTA then. And then the guests would get up and say something. And I remember the first Sunday when we had them, we did this for about 4 years, I think. But the first time when they got ready to go out on the bus, they had spoken and said how much they enjoyed the children, and they saw that we were just like they were, and they'd been so lonesome for their own family and their own children. So that when they got ready to go on the bus, I don't think there was, amongst the women anyway, there wasn't a dry eye there. We just, you know how when you're in the hospital and the person in the bed next to you, you feel like you've known them all your life after you've been with them a week. Well, that was that we had just that short acquaintance, and we just felt like we really knew them. And I thought that was really one of the good experiences that PTA did, bringing the world together. At my house, I had the first year. Were you home then, Bruce, when the?
I was never home when I needed one.
Well, the first year we had a Japanese couple, a man and his wife. One was studying at the University of Chicago, and the other one Northwestern, and one was studying. I don't know what you would call it, industrial law, commercial law or something. The other was studying for marriages and what kind of law. That was two different things. But they were so tiny, and they spoke so quietly, and by the time they left, we found ourselves almost whispering because that's just the way they were.
You remember they made people do that all the time now, but I hadn't thought of that in years. They made stir fry in a wok or something on the kitchen table.
And we had two cats there. One was called Salt and one was called Pepper. And I remember we were sitting and somebody was calling the cat, "Here's Salt, Salt, Salt." And they were just totally confused. They kept trying to pass the salt in.
And then when I was going to the United Church of Christ out there in the country at the time, and I took them to I had an adult Sunday, I had a senior class, high school seniors. So I took them with me to my Sunday school class. And I tell you, that was an experience. They told those people about their young people. It was after the war, and they had gotten the coffee. They had the coffee cafes or shops, whatever it was, and that's where their young people gathered. And so and she was saying how since the soldiers had been there, how modernized their young people were becoming, and the parents didn't like it. But one of the things I thought was real interesting, the next year we had an Englishman, a man probably in his 50s, he was in charge of all of the education on the Ivory Coast of Africa. And we had a black man, he was an older man too, great big man, and his uncle was the Prime Minister of Rhodesia, and they were going to split Rhodesia. England was giving them their freedom, and they were going to be split in half. So his uncle had wanted him to come here to study our Constitution and to come back and help them write the Constitution. They said we had the cream of the crop from these students that came. Well, anyway, at the dinner table Friday night, we got into a discussion, and the Englishman said something about, "Well, we've been pretty good to you. Look how we've educated you." And the black man spoke up and said, "Yes, after 200 years of control, we have 2 attorneys and 1 doctor." But and they got into quite a discussion. But the interesting part was when we got through dinner, they said to me, "Do you have a maid?" And I said, "No." And so the Englishman, he had a white shirt on, he started rolling up his sleeves, he started taking the dishes off and going out the kitchen. I said, "I don't want you to do that." They said, "Oh yes, if you don't have anyone." The black man went out and rolled his up and started putting water in my sink. You know, those men, they did the dishes. These men, when I told my mother that, mother was not used to it. And this is many years back now, remember, when we weren't as acquainted with different races as we are now. My mother wasn't. And mother said, when I told her he had washed my dishes, she said, you better wash those dishes again. You also had an Indian person, and I had an Arab, and we went to Sunday school, and I remember who went in the same car or not, but the car ahead of us was stuck in the snow. Remember that? We were in the same car. Really bad. Your Indian wouldn't get out and help push that car out of our way, but my Arab did. He had talking about getting together. Am I taking too much time?
No.
After we were farther in, my kids were in farther along in high school. I don't know, that's when the Alexander's had a meat packing place over in East Chicago. And she was in PTA with me, and we got quite well acquainted with my sister too. And when we got into high school, then we had decided we would have a dinner, which they hadn't done before. And so Mr. Alexander said he would provide the meat for it, and we got working with him. Well, shortly after that, Ann Alexander came to me and said, Juanita, I'm going to start a group. We're going to call it Person to Person, and I want it to be of different cultures, different religions, different ideas, you know, and we'll meet in my house, and the thing will be that anybody can talk about any problem they have, and we will try to look at it as if we were that person. We won't be critical. We will try to really understand it. And I said, Ann, and she asked my sister too, and I said, Ann, how did you happen to ask us? And she said, you know, since I've been in Crete, now at that time, I don't know how, I suppose most of you know that Lincolnshire would not accept Jewish people in their club. And they had found this out. And she said, you were the only two people who ever invited us to your home. And I said, you know, Ann, that's how we get ideas. I'm sure that no one even knows that you're Jewish, didn't think anything about it, but you have a lot of money. You talk a lot about traveling and all that you do, and I think most people they just don't feel comfortable inviting you to their home. But here she thought all the time it was because she was Jewish. But we did start this group, and it was a wonderful group. There were a few blacks and a few Japanese and some Catholics and some Lutherans and some Methodists. And we talked, and I learned more then about the problems that some of the black people have. You know, these were people who were interested in education and you know, were trying to do, but they had so many others that didn't do as well. Anyway, it was a very learning experience. So we've done our share here in Crete of trying to get the world to know each other, I think.
Oral Williams was part of that group, and her husband was the chief of police of East Chicago Heights, which is Fort Heights now.
And she was she should have been a model. She was a beautiful woman. She got up in the morning at 5 o'clock and was getting her education on TV from the program they had there. She had 2 girls, and she had to get up at 5 o'clock to do it. And I didn't at that time know many white women who had 2 children who bothered to do that, so she went up in my estimation.
They built that beautiful red brick house right there.
What?
They built that beautiful red brick house right east of the police station in Fort Heights on 30, and they wanted to be an inspiration to them.
Right, they moved back to that area after they'd been gone from it.
Remember Mother Lou, for me growing up in Crete, where everybody looked and sounded just like us, nobody was any different, and then, and it just wasn't discussed at all. I didn't think about it, I was a kid, and then when you belonged to that group, then they would have picnics. So we'd go, so then I saw these people, different nationalities and races, you know, mingling, and then I went to school in Chicago and lived in an apartment building where there were all sorts of people from all over the world living, all different kinds of interracial marriages. So I still didn't think about it, it was just the norm. And then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina in 1970, and Oh my gosh, I mean, it was a big difference, and because of hearing, you know, with that group, I just didn't question anything, and then moving down there, talk about a big mouth and almost getting into trouble.
The first time we were going to have a picnic out in our house in the country, the black people asked me if it was safe to come out there, and I was ashamed for them to have to ask me that.
You know, when I was in 5th grade when Lori Alexander was one of my best friends in school, and when I was in 5th grade when she was going to move to Crete, and I remember coming home because I remember everybody at school saying, she's Jewish. So I remember going home and asking my mom, what is Jewish? I had no idea.
And this family later on, Bruce, worked for them in high school, what, your junior and senior years in between?
I worked off and on for maybe 10 years.
And when he went away to college, he'd come back and go right, you know, they'd have a long Christmas time. He could go right back there to work again, so they were a wonderful family, we felt.
Juanita,
What?
when we came to Crete, when you come to a strange town, and you know no one, you were one of the people that was so warm to us.
Well, I liked your husband.
I know what you mean
She
too.
may be 89, but she's not dead.
Jenny, you know what she means because she likes your husband?
No, but about feeling more between Juanita and Helen, when I moved out to the country and I was in Chicago. And Buck was an old farm boy, he just fell right into it, even though he worked in Harvey. But Juanita and Helen, they just took me under their wing, and when I tell my family or friends that my neighbors were a quarter of a mile down the road, they thought I was crazy moving out there. But I never felt that way because they're such good neighbors and good friends all these years. And our kids growing up together.
They think they're cousins or
Yeah,
relatives.
well, Janet and Jackie are the same age, my oldest and Juanita's youngest. And they insisted they were cousins. They didn't care what anyone said. They
They went away to nursing school together.
Yeah, and Jackie wrote home, when she wrote home from nursing school, and in one letter she said, how is the neighborhood family? Now, that's not an expression she heard from us. That was her own feeling.
Yes, when we went out to play, I mean, people, it was more country then, it's more grown up now, but the Battermans, the Hans, and we used to go out, we'd just pack a lunch, we'd be gone the whole day then, and, you know, they didn't worry about us, and we'd all get together and play ball and do things, and used to go into the bridge, that's where I had my first cigarette, my blower.
Should I tell
Sure
about
wasn't
my
a
first
cigar in
time?
the outhouse?
No, it wasn't a cigar in the outhouse.
Should I tell about my first time being called into the police station?
Oh. There might be people there that remember that.
I remember my mother-in-law, she helped us raise our kids because she lived with us. And we decided to go visit Janet in South Carolina. So we have a 6-month-old and a 3-year-old. And we decided to leave at 4, just Juanita and I were going to drive there. Bruce was working in Louisiana, was going to meet us there, and then we were going to go to Montreal. So we decided to leave about 4:30 so the kids would be asleep. Well, you know, they were awake. And so we had the baby, in those days, no car seat, so it was terrible. So we had the baby in a drawer, I think we put in the car. And then we had Natalie in there, and so we drove. And Juanita says, okay, we're going to drive every 2 hours. And she would like decide how many miles. So she always wanted to make more miles than me for that 2 hours. Of course, I drove in the mountain and I drove in the rain. Where it was nice. You know, she would say, you're late, you know. So we drove all the way there, and then we
We
spent
went to Charleston first
Yeah.
to Janet's house.
But then we were going to go to Montreal. Bruce was going back in Louisiana, so we left in the morning, And we got around Washington DC and it's like 4 in the afternoon. And we said, what are we going to do with these kids? They're awake, you know, sit in a motel room. So we got them in their pajamas and we decided to drive all the way to Montreal. We drove. We're going through New York and it's like a big tunnel. It's dark. We're running out of gas and suddenly we see a police station. Well, we were so
It's the most scary time I ever had. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning and we're running out of gas. Just can't see a gas station around.
Well, we got in Montreal in the middle, about 4 in the morning. We drove all the way there with these 2 kids. It was a long trip. Yeah.
I always did
That
like
was
to travel.
Yeah. No, that was
Does anybody
fun.
in Crete ever remember my mother getting a speeding ticket?
She always talked about
That's
it.
what I mean.
I never
No, but I remember that one accident. Remember, I wanted to go shopping, and we stopped at Fannie Kinsey's, and they were talking, it's like, come on, Mom, let's go. So we finally went, and that's when they were building 394. And it was new, and we pulled onto it, and Mother was watching. I mean, I don't know what happened. Anyway, pulled out a little bit too far, and a milk truck was coming along. Sideswiped. Remember that, Mom? It was
You never
scary.
told me about that, I never heard that story before.
Yeah, through Janet.
I didn't get a ticket.
Jan was in the back seat, right? I told her to shut up, I remember that, she was lying. And the milkman thought we would be dead, but we had that heavy car.
We covered, as everyone had a chance to say what they would like to say.
Family kind of took over, didn't they?
We're all
Thank
talkers,
you.
we come by it naturally.
Thank you very much for coming.
And I'd like to thank everyone. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that Dolores is here. Every part of my life has been represented because I've worked with Dolores so many years, and Harriet's here, and the people from swimming are here, and Hannah's here. I didn't expect to see her. She took over my job as precinct committee when
I did. Big shoes to fill.
I don't know, any one of you, if they decide to do your life, you find all the things you've done, but I really do appreciate your coming here. I know the Historical Society does too.
Before you get up, we have refreshments, but Juanita, could you turn around and sit there so I can get a picture of you with everyone here?
Sit right here by Irma. Irma goes with me swimming 3 mornings a week. You can't call her any life. No,
Since they're just taking pictures, yes, I think I'm going to make, unless you object, we're not going to have a meeting in November or December. We haven't had any in the last 5 years with those funds because we've been so busy. But I am going to call a board probably in November to discuss the programs for the coming year. And be sure to sign in the guest book, because Juanita's going to get that along with a scrapbook of the photos. I want Juanita in there. And remember the tools and Christmas cards and refreshments are served.
I have Juanita's family all together with Juanita. I can take a picture. You don't mind? So I'll just kind of stand over here and I can put Juanita and the family. Oh.
Let me turn this off now.
Yeah, all the relatives. Everybody is related.